Hi everybody, welcome to Star Citizen Live Game Dev Player Wearables. I'm your host, I almost said my old title again, Associate Content Manager, no. Man, I messed up my title. It's that kind of morning.
Man. It's that kind of morning.
Subscriptions producer.
E3's on.
Jared Huckabee. We are here with live character artist Corey Johnson. Corey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
It's been a while since we've had you on the show.
It's a little bit too long, yeah.
And we've never had you for one of our game dev segments. Corey, you work here with the player art team, or the character art team rather, which is located almost primarily here in the LA office. I think there's only like one member that's not in this office, right?
Yeah, we have one member in the UK.
Yeah. So it's rare that we have an entire department centralized like this, but it's really great for us because I get to see all your character work from start to finish a lot of times.
Sure.
And today we are going to go through the process of creating a player wearable, in this case a helmet, from concept to implementation, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and a bigger focus on the actual texturing material work. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so what we're using today as our basis is something you may have seen earlier this quarter on ISC, and that's one of the new subscriber flare items. We don't have the official in-lore name for it yet, but we've been calling it the Centurion helmet.
Yeah, which is, I guess, a little confusing to people, but for us, the design is based off that, so it's easier for us.
All right, so this will be a unique helmet that's available to subscribers next quarter, and so you get this concept from Jeremiah or one of the other character concept artists. And where do you start from here? Where do you go from here?
So from here, actually, it's not always the case, but some of the times the concept artist work in 3D, so they'll hand off a starting point in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
They smash stuff together, so like there's quite a bit of cleanup and all that, which is totally fine. Yeah, so like once Jeremiah hands this off, I'm going to ZBrush. This is the finished model, but I can show you here. So all the red is the already existing low poly from the Odyssey helmet. So this is one of the ones where we're trying to leverage part of an existing helmet to like speed this process along. So then we, from concept on, retrofitted all this stuff into it.
Right. So this helmet was built on top of the existing Odyssey helmet.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. One, it's just more efficient to do that when you can. It's also more efficient performance-wise when you can have as many shared assets and resources as possible in the game.
Yeah. So like, in terms of any type of cleanup, often when we get things, things aren't quite lining up, so like it's often as simple as just making things line up and then polishing things out. Yeah. I won't stay too long in the ZBrush phase. But from there, once that's all good and happy, jump into a program like Topogun or Maya to retopologize it.
Topogun? This is one I haven't heard of before.
Yeah. It's literally only for making low poly. So it does it pretty well because it's a very focused program.
So what are we looking at right now? Why is half of it in this weird?
Because it's completely symmetrical. You only need to make half of this, and then once this is good, I'll jump in Maya, mirror it over, stitch it together, and move on.
Okay.
But I can show you. It's as simple as this. You just end up building out parts of it like this, and yeah. It's not the fastest part of the pipeline, but eventually you get to this point. The other big thing at this point is looking at the concept compared to the low. With our texturing pipe, we're masking with blend maps, which is texture-based, but we're also masking through geometry to block out submaterials. So at this point, it's a little, you got to keep in mind how many submats you're going to want and how much you want to break it down.
Okay. Take me through that. What's masking?
Yeah, so I can show you in Maya a little bit easier. So each one of these colors is a different submat. And what that means is it gets to use 4 channels of a blend map per color. So when you're looking at the concept, you gotta take a moment to really plan out how you want to cut the geo up. because sometimes you end up getting into game when you're texturing and you're like, oh, actually, I can't really accomplish what I want. I have to go back to the low poly stage, cut some more geo in, break out this piece, rebuild your material, and then continue forward like that. So that's not, it's the only part where you like really have to like think about exactly what you want to get in the end.
So it's not just you just take the image that Jeremiah does and recreate it in 3D. We were talking
lot
about
more
this earlier
technical.
before we went
Yeah.
live. And let's go ahead. Let's get into the technical stuff, because when these types of shows, that's really what we're here for. We want to learn a bit more about how this process works. Now, you talked about separating the geos, all these different
Yeah.
things. We go back to that one with all the different colors. And why do we separate into that many pieces?
Basically, so this one's pretty. I took this one pretty far in terms of separating it. Partly because I wanted to make the texturing side just faster. So like what that means is like, so this yellow part, if I wanted to texture it as far as like, oh, it's gonna be like looking at the concept, oh, it's kind of like an exposed metal, but it has some edge wear and stuff like that. By breaking out just this piece, I get 4 channels for it. So base layer will be like a brass, and then I can start to build up other materials on top of it. So the further we break the stuff down, just the more complicated we really go with the actual texture.
So each colored area gets
Yeah.
4 base layers, or 4 layers, including a base. And then you build on
Yeah,
top
like
of it.
4 masks that,
Format.
and each mask is, it could be for color, tweaking the material, like each mask has the full gambit of what we can do. So
So each part allows you 4 levels of customization
Basically.
to it, basically.
Yeah.
Painting, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, the way to think of it is it's basically, we're using an RGBA, and the alpha is the base layer, and then we're just stacking up materials on top of that.
Okay.
So it goes alpha, then blue channel,
Right.
then green, then red. And like with that, there's the methodology of you really want, whatever's taking up the most room, try to leave that for the alpha channel. So you're continually getting smaller on the actual texture coverage as you go up that
Right.
chain.
Okay.
Yeah, just because like it's an easier way to work. Yeah, so like once you spend a decent amount of time doing all this business, come into Maya, dupe it over. The other big part of this is UV mapping. These aren't very good UVs, I'll admit that. I was trying to be fast, not efficient.
Now I'm going to ask you about this. I've been here a little over 4 years. I've been hanging out with the character team most of that time. UV mapping and stuff. This is one aspect of this I have virtually no understanding about.
Yeah.
Like I look at this and I don't understand how this applies to the thing. And I'm not saying that for the purposes of teaching the show. I don't get it. So help me out here.
Looking at this piece, this blue part, this part here, UV mapping is really just trying to get your geometry laid out as flat as possible, right?
For what end?
So that when you do apply textures and details like that, it doesn't warp and get all crazy. So I can do something like this. So you can see here, it's not bad warping, but it's a bit. You want these squares to be as square as possible all the time. Because anywhere where this is warping, like if I put a material that, let's say has a lot of like vertical lines, you'll see that.
The lines will start to skew.
It'll show up really like in not a great way in the game because you'll see that it's skewing that way. So that's what UVing is all about, getting.
So it's almost like a when people do wraps on their car. They get these. They get a big. It comes in a big flat thing, but when you look at it all flat, it's weirdly shaped and odd. And then but it's because they're anticipating all of the shapes and curves of the car in their flat printing.
Yeah, something else is I think it's called papercraft. There's websites for it where you can basically get different plans of how you cut something out and then fold it together. And then you have like a little character or something like that. It's the exact same stuff. So the very important phase.
It's because textures are 2D and you have to apply a 2D texture to a 3D thing.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, was my car wrap analogy good?
Yeah, no, it's
Okay,
perfect.
I don't know.
It's taking something that is flat but needs to wrap over a surface that is not flat in any way. Yeah, so you can kind of see how it's all broken down. Based on the submats I set up, I often try to also have my UVs cut out that way. It just makes texturing easier because I can do texturing things based off of what my UV unwrap is, so just an efficiency thing. Yeah, so we got this guy, and then when we start to jump into texturing, it'll be something like this, which doesn't look like a lot, but.
Can we see how we make a change to that flat UV map and how it applies to here? Can we see how it applies?
I can attempt to, but I might not have that working file anymore.
Oh, okay.
But I can probably get it to work. Let me. So with Substance Painter, if I exported this in there, it wouldn't work very well. Because every different material I have applied in Painter would show up as a different texture set. So it'd basically break out all the geo as you see it here, and that's not really usable like that. So.
Star Sickle says, a good UV is the difference between easy painting and texturing, and oh my god, my design is getting broken up even though I'm drawing.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. But, you know, like as you start to learn where you can like speed things up and be a little bit sloppy and get away with stuff. Like if I know a material, a spot on the UVs will never, if it'll basically just have a very noisy material on it, I can probably get away with a decent amount of sloppy UV work. Just because if it's noisy and it slightly stretches, you'll never see it. So. Someone
asked how many wearables we plan to have ready at launch. So that's not a consideration that we do here at this level. We're just making as many things as we want to make for the game and whatnot. So
pretty much.
It's not like you set a quota and then you get that quota and then you relax. It's you just work and add and work and add and work and add. And
yeah. What's
the next thing we can do? Greyheart asks, why is the helmet so narrow? Will a head fit inside? Yeah.
No, for sure. So I don't necessarily want to go to the engine right this moment, but I can showcase it here.
We're also missing a body for scale at this point. So yeah. So you've got your.
So I mean, because it's built off the Odyssey helmet, like all that stuff was figured out here. Yeah, the head fits in this helmet. So, but I can pull in our base male head and show.
That is the virtue of building off of a pre-existing asset, since it's all been worked out for the Odyssey, and the Odyssey is in game. It's functional, and we know the head fits in it. You know, building over the Odyssey saves us a lot of time with the metrics.
So you can see it doesn't look like it, but we actually have a ton of room with this helmet.
This is, of course, for a normal size head and not a gargantuan melon cranium like me.
For sure. And in real life, helmets are actually ginormous. Tons of padding, tons of protection.
Wait, what is this that we're seeing over to the right here? This looks like, I don't know, I'm thinking of that head in Total Recall. I don't know.
So I feel like people have definitely seen bugs around this where they see like a human face stretched across objects. This is our base male's UV layout. And all the heads actually have this UV layout.
So the same thing we were talking about with the helmet, but instead of all the different pieces, it's one giant.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is this is the usual setup for doing any kind of head stuff. You just want to maximize the UV space as much as possible. And as you can see, there's like, towards the less important areas, which is like the back of the head, you allow for quite a lot of stretching, just because we'll have hair and hats and all kinds of things, and you'll never really see it. So, yeah.
For those watching, wherever you're watching, we are taking questions live during the show. You can submit your questions with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. And I'll do my best to pick them out through the chat throughout the course of the show.
Yeah, so like just to break this down real quick. This looks like it's just a bunch of noisy stuff, but what these channels are doing, so for these areas, I made the assumption like, okay, these will be painted metal, but I don't want it just to be too flat of a painted metal, so ended up adding just this noise in. And
like a brushed kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's just something to add a little bit of like of a. Once I go into the game, you'll see it's really subtle speckling. And then for areas like the green stuff, these are exposed metal. So based off the concept, I was like, okay, it's gonna be bronze, but it'd be probably look good to do like some slight edging, and then ended up using gold to edge it, just because it helps bump it out a little bit more.
I like the up at the top where it goes along the edges there.
Yeah, yeah, and then like I can showcase just some of the fun things in Painter.
This is Substance Painter we're in right now.
Yeah. So like you can do very fast things
This-
like adding a generator.
This is like our 4th software so far, just for a helmet. So a lot of tools.
Character art uses a lot of stuff. It's just how it is. So like you can see here, as quickly as that, like I have all this edging that I can then start to tweak further. That's like really the huge power of Substance Painter is it's a completely non-destructive workflow.
What's that mean?
So like normally when you would paint, like I can make a paint layer here, and then this would be actually, I'm painting. But now if I'm like, oh, I don't like that, it's just a paint layer. So it's flat, I can't really do anything with that. But with something like this, you drop down a fill layer, add a mask, and now I'm actually doing all the work through a mask, right? So this paint layer is actually just flooding this with white, but the mask is actually driving where stuff can show up. So like, I have this, but then I can come in here, add a paint layer, drop that down, switch this to multiply. And because it's multiplying on nothing, it doesn't show up, but now I can start to bring in like, no, I just want it to show up in these areas. You know what I mean? And it's all about, like I said, non-destructive, so you can do so many things just back and forth with this, like, oh, I don't like this paint layer, I can switch this on top and see what kind of result I get, and come in here, add a fill. I can switch this to multiply.
Yes, the fin is for picking up radio transmissions. You'll get ECN alerts twice as fast.
100%, that's what it does. Actually, no, I don't think that's what it does. Maybe eventually, though. Yeah. So, like, this step can get very complicated or very simple. Because I broke up the submats to as far as I did, this setup for me ended up being very simple. So then, all I'm deriving out of this is exporting the masks out. Those go in Photoshop.
And we get another one of these.
Yeah, so this black and white mask is literally what I was deriving out of there. And then these will be compiled into the actual blend map. And the blend map is, so here's my channels, right? Blue, green, red, and then alpha always exists because it's our base layer. So that's why it's not represented.
All right.
Yes.
So Substance Painter exports this? Or gets this like how do you... This is the
Like,
part that always
like
seemed
build
like
this?
freaking magic to me. Like how do you know in this square where any of this is going on the helmet?
Yeah, so I mean, like looking at it like this, yeah, obviously that's kind of confusing, but so what this is here, so B and B1, in relation to substance, it's these two layers. B1.
Okay, so substance layer is exporting a square, a
Yeah,
flattened
yeah.
square. So it automatically takes what you've been doing in 3D and
Yeah.
flattens it out into a square.
I mean, I can showcase it like this.
Oh,
So here is my UV layout. I can get rid of the material response, yeah. So like this is, I mean, this isn't really useful to work in this view like this, but yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then I can show both.
Wow.
Yeah. We work completely in 4K. That's not what we use actually in games. That's way too expensive. But we always work at that source level of texture resolution.
It's amazing to me that it sits here and takes all these other pieces and then not just flattens them out, but then finds like this efficient way to fit them all into a square.
Well, like so this is all just derived from what I did in Maya, right? So that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you have to take all these
Yeah.
parts and put them out?
Yeah. This is all manual.
Okay. It's
Sorry,
like extreme
let me rephrase
packing.
that.
It's like extreme packing.
I didn't do this manually. I ran a process. Like I said, I was trying to be fast. So.
So I know.
Because like. Normally, what you want to do, like if I was doing a clothing asset, like having everything skewed like this isn't. You usually don't want that because then fabric, like my shirt, it's running very horizontal. Now, if all my stuff is skewed, you have to think of like on a monitor how the pixels are drawing. You start to get weird anti-aliasing. So a way to avoid that or minimize it is make sure your UVs are laid out up, down, left, right, like pretty straight. But for something like this, I wasn't worried about that. Yeah. So then Photoshop, get these, compile it out, export that out, and really it's just that. We have a normal map. I didn't do dirt and wear. So.
So I was asking how helmet attachments would play into this. I mean, essentially that mask is one giant attachment.
I mean, the way it's built, it really has become its own helmet.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to talk about like helmet attachments for something like this, it might end up being, because like we're just going to add stuff to it. If there was some kind of like, I don't know, this attachment gives you zoom in vision, and when it's some kind of like spec ops optical thing off on one side, it would end up having, we would build that specifically to this helmet so that it can fit in appropriately.
But it's still a separate item. It'd
be a separate item, and it's
build the separate item
for this specifically. Because our helmets are such varying shapes, there's no other way to go about it. We'd have to do it unique to the helmet, which in the end is I think the way we've gone is totally fine because, a spec ops optical thing, you wouldn't want that on the Explorer helmet, right? Like it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, unless it's something that literally sticks out from the side or sticks out from the top like a GoPro.
Yeah, like maybe like a small antenna type thing could be decently uniform, but it all comes down to like how much that attachment actually touches the helmet. So like something like that, yeah, sure, we could make something very generic for that. It would just be, its position would be driven by a joint.
It's like somebody stick a giant boba straw into the head or something.
Hey, yes, we can do that. Yeah. So then go through the texturing stuff, export all your maps, and then going into the actual engine. And then saying all the materials, you'll arrive on something like this.
What?
What does that mean?
Oh, program number 6. JD is counting the number of programs you use just to make a helmet.
I mean, we could definitely institute. Actually, there is more. Like Marvelous Designer. That's for simulating cloth and stuff like that, which obviously is all hard surface. So,
but not every helmet is. Some have cloth
That's true.
elements.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So like coming to this step, the actual material setup. It really you just start playing with stuff once you get here. And as you can see, each layer is deciding the material, the color, the actual tiling of that material, and then the actual gloss.
And these are the 4 layers that you were talking about before, when you went through and you separated all the pieces.
Yep.
So now how many different, on this helmet at this point, how many different pieces are there to customize?
So in terms of the setup?
Yeah. All that, 1, 2,
15.
15. Yeah. So this helmet has 15 customizable pieces.
15 submaterials, which that's what each one of these are, yeah. So we also use, obviously, glass. If I had the glass in there, that's not something we'd use with Layer Blend. It'd be the actual glass material. This helmet doesn't actually have glass. This one does. So we use a glass material as well, and then we also use alumes sometimes, because then we can do glowy stuff like this.
So lume's a specific shade.
Very glowy stuff, yeah. Yeah. So we actually, in terms of setting up glows, we can do it now through layer blend, or we can do it through a loom.
All right.
The advantage with the layer blend glow is you get to do really fun stuff because it's texture based. Let me find a part. So if I turn on some glow, this might be a really tiny part.
Chat, for those watching
Where
on
is it?
Twitch, give me a base color. If we're gonna color this, Give me a base color to start with, a primary color for the entire
It's
helmet.
not gonna show up too well.
All right, that went fast. Hot pink.
Now they say that, and I already have a hot pink one.
You already have a hot pink one.
Yeah.
Let's not spoil it. Let's do the process, and then we'll go.
Okay, we can run through it. Yeah. So in terms of actually doing material variants, I usually just start like top down and just start tweaking stuff. So hot pink, it's pretty aggressive.
It's pretty. That's like 1986 in a bottle right there.
The other thing we can do is, so like the double-edged sword of our material variants right now is when we do them, we are duping the entire material. We're not just isolating like, oh, it's just this part and that part, we change the color. Like a lot of games do that, right? Like you have very specific limited areas where you're actually, that are tintable. And like where you can actually change them. Because we are duping material, the great thing, like for the character artists and everyone playing, we get to change everything because it's a whole new material. So like we can take it as far as we want. So something like this, we have this bronze material here. So I can swap that out. Where is that actually showing up? Is that just there? So like that was bronze, but now I can do that. And now it's a glowy bit, right? Like, it's like as extreme changes we want, we can do that stuff. But we can make this pink.
Pink glow? Can we have a pink glow?
Yeah, let me tone that down a little bit.
All right, give me a second color, chat. What goes well with pink? What goes well with pink,
Quite a few
chat?
colors that can go decently well.
Somebody asked if we have a randomized button.
For this, no, we do not. And like, sort of like the reason why we don't have that, every helmet, how it's set up is very unique to that helmet.
Right.
So in terms of randomizing, there are directions we can go in to get that functionality, but it's super fucking technical. So
All right. Purple.
purple. I can also
let's
showcase
let's
this.
do this.
Yeah. So like this is the other.
JJ, can we see this? Get the camera. So this is one of the things that I often see you guys do.
I can pull this.
Sorry, no, they can see it there.
Can you see it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
They can sit there. Now, character references or color references.
Yeah.
What's a color reference and why do we use it?
Yeah, so like this is a Pinterest board that it's my own one I set up. Yeah, it's really just like you'll start to see like, oh, here's like a clump of purple stuff. Here's some green stuff. Here's some white and gold. Like, yeah, it's all just giving yourself something to look at and
You see
then
color combinations.
give yourself a direction to go in. Like, I could just sit here, not looking at reference, but this gets a result faster, and you end up with more ideas to like run with.
And there's stuff from all different styles here.
Yeah.
But because you're not looking, you don't matter. It's not a question of whether it's manga or sci-fi or fantasy or whatever. It's you're looking for color combinations.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you can see here I have an eye, like, it's all over the place. Literally just, oh, I actually like these colors together. I was trying to see if I had a section of pink stuff.
There's some pink stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can go with pink and purple. That's not too obnoxious, I don't think.
Well, we've never concerned ourselves with being too obnoxious here in Star Citizen Line.
Wait, how aggressive pink and purple are we talking? You guys want something like Tone down or
You're the artist. Do something that if you've now had the direction to do something pink and purple, let
yeah.
go with your own personal
All right.
inclinations at this point.
No, I'm gonna go aggressive. Let's go that direction.
What would Corey do with the design brief? Make it pink and purple. 'Cause I want to see what your process is.
I'm not always a huge fan of like obnoxious colors in video games, but I do like that they like. I want games to have it, right? Like, I want people to have the option if that's what they're into. Yeah, so I can show real quick all that speckly stuff I was doing in Painter.
Right.
So like, here it is. So kind of doing things like this. So like pulling in just a little bit of pink, and it's subtle, but it just adds that little bit. The other thing that gives me is actually playing around with the actual gloss value. So right now that's just the spec response, right? Mm-hmm. So just to build up like some of that variance in there. Yeah, and then like from here it's really just, okay, I kind of like these two colors, and then I'm just going through and replacing areas with those colors.
For those folks who have been asking basically feature-related questions, remind you that we're sitting with an artist now. Feature-related stuff are the areas of designers and stuff like that, system designers, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we don't have the right personnel here to answer feature questions.
I guess they could ask me what I would like, but I don't know.
That's.
Is that a dangerous direction?
I've known you long enough that I'm absolutely not going to ask you what
Fair
you would
enough.
like.
Fair enough. Yeah, so you can see like this area. You know, it's a subtle thing, but it adds quite a bit.
It's
to
like the
add
pink was
edging in.
underneath, and then they painted the purple
Yeah,
over.
yeah, you can start
and now
to play with
you've
that
got
stuff.
some wear down, so the purple's wearing down and exposing the pink underneath.
Yeah.
Can you clarify why you thought the UV map that you had for the helmet Maya wouldn't have worked well in Substance Painter?
I mean, no, well, it worked fine because that's what I did work off of. All I'm really saying is like, this is sloppy. Like, this giant piece, me letting it be this giant piece, not very efficient. Like, I could have cut it here and then made instead of it bowing out, made it a little bit straighter, and I could pack it a little bit better. So like if we look, this is the Odyssey helmet, much better,
Right.
much better layout. You know what I mean? Even just visually, you're like, oh, okay, this seems oriented better. It's kind of chaotic. Yeah, and this step really it comes down to the artist, like what they're willing to try to get away with to save time. No, because I mean, like in the end, you know, we're trying to put a lot of content out.
You make a good point.
You got to learn those corners that you can sometimes cut.
You make a point. It's very easy to go deep into the weeds on
for
just
sure.
one thing. You know, it's
Yeah.
people often lament how long video game development takes, and
Yeah.
a lot of that is knowing when to stop and to move on, knowing when you've got it, and saying, "Do I got it? Yeah, I could probably play with this another, 4 days, but I've got it here."
Yeah.
And knowing when to go to the next step. It's a difficult balance. I know there's a famous quote about how art is never finished; it's only ever abandoned. And if you looked at the
Oh, for
movies
sure.
of George
Yeah,
Lucas,
yeah,
he would
yeah.
certainly agree with that.
Do they like the gold? Do you guys like the gold?
I like the gold. I'm not even going to ask what these people like.
More shiny.
I like the gold.
Fair enough.
Hey, sometimes there's perks to having your own show.
100%. Yeah, like so. This is like
These people, says Kilmark. My people.
your people.
These people are my people.
So like
And I
one
am
of,
your people.
one of the functionalities, like if you guys see me like just sitting here clicking on a submat, I'm doing that so I can see it do this where it highlights like the actual part, because it's very important to have that, because often like I made this helmet, so like I'm texturing all that. Sometimes you'll end up doing material variants or doing other texture stuff with someone else's asset, just if that's how the scheduling works out. So it's super helpful to be able to like come into a setup that you're like, I don't know where anything is, and be able to, you know, find those things a little bit faster.
Somebody asked, I can't find the question now, but somebody asked if it's possible to do a transparent helmet. I would imagine you got a big transparent glass thing on the.
Yeah, I could make this all glass.
We're not going to do that today, but.
So I did do that a while ago. I made an all glass everything, armor, undersuit, helmet. I did it really fast and it was really fun. We were joking, it's like, oh, we'll give this to devs only. It'll be a Predator suit. There'll just be these creepy devs in the background wearing their full glass armor. But the only issue with that is, like, it would probably still show up your head and your body. So you'd just be a guy in underwear running around with some glass over you. So
I'm
not the coolest thing.
I'm not even looking at chat. I know there's at least 100 people that don't have a problem with that. I don't even have to look at chat.
Hey man, you guys throw it out there, maybe we'll push. Is that dangerous to try to get them to? We want glass armor now.
So. Oh, I do like the pink glow. Glass armor is a staple of MMOs, isn't it? I'm not entirely sure about that, Ash.
Yeah. It is fun, though.
Mantis asks if those screws in the helmet are actual geometry or is it a normal map or something?
A little bit of both. So these ones, it's not very much geo, but there's some.
Okay, so you made an indentation in the geo to give it some.
Yeah, so basically I did the indent and then I did the dent up.
Because we see right here the way light plays.
Yeah,
with the
it helps quite.
geo change.
If it's any smaller than this, I wouldn't have done that because it would just be way too expensive and not really worth it. Yeah, and like this is another thing where it just comes down to like the artist's call. Like sometimes it's justified, sometimes it's not. It's just case by case. Yeah, I mean we can make the mohawk pink. Let's go in that direction too. I need a painted metal. So like here's another thing where like this top mohawk part is bronze right now. And because we have full freedom, now it's painted metal.
You have an entire materials library that we've kind of built up over time.
Yeah, and actually recently we had one of our character artists, Shane, going through and actually updating that. So pretty soon we're going to start to roll that stuff out. We rebuilt a lot of materials just to bring more of a standard to it. Yeah, because like one of the issues with like not having strict standards within the material library, one material base diffuse gray value might be 170, another one might be 210. So when we're multiplying color over it, applying this purple multiplying on those two different grayscale values is very different. One's darker, so
right.
That starts to get annoying. So like we're unifying all that stuff out, and yeah.
That's one of the advantages.
I mean, this is pretty. I mean, I feel like a unicorn horn would really make it.
If you ask Todd Pappy, he'd probably approve that.
I mean, it's a good style. Come on.
All right.
Do you want me to turn my camera?
Sure. I know you've got some other. So you've been playing.
Yeah.
You've been playing a bit before the show, just to see what we can do as far as the different types of stuff.
Yeah. So orange creamsicle, big fan. Orange and white is awesome together. I really like it.
I'm a big fan of the orange creamsicle because it reminds me of the Clone Troopers and the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, and like, here I can showcase. Here's the OG helmet.
Can we make this big? Can we use more of the screen here and showcase more? There we go.
Actually, I'm gonna drop this field of view down too. Make that a little bit nicer.
Here we go.
Like, as you're making these, when you're using like the base metals, it really starts to matter base metal compared to colors. So like with the creamsicle having the bronze, I don't know, like it starts to not work. So like that's why I swapped it out to like this brushed steel, and like, yeah, we're allowed to take it that far.
How do you determine if an asset is too expensive? Does that come from
Too expensive.
somebody else? Is that something you have to determine?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it comes from a lot of departments. For us, we have some base guidelines we try to stick around. CryEngine allows for like some pretty wide ranges, so it's not super strict. In a lot of ways, if we put something in, we're like, this might be a little too expensive or whatever. Sometimes we just put it in and we see what happens. But we do have profiling tools to, okay, let's isolate this helmet.
Yep.
Yes, we can derive exactly how many draw calls, how expensive is geometry, how expensive are the texture maps. Like we can get all that information.
Yeah, the profiling tools. We've got QA. We've got
Yeah.
multiple levels of
Engineering will get involved. Like if there's a like, oh, we're releasing a new landing zone. Oh, the NPCs are really expensive. Like, you know, like it's oftentimes in a situation where you're like, okay, but why here? Why these characters? And like you start to investigate further.
Right. I'm setting up a bot. Hold up here. Got it going now. Folks in chat, numbering 1 through 6 from left to right. So the blue one is 1, the red is 2, the creamsicle is 3, the bumblebee is 4, and then
Black and yellow is also a great combo.
You tell me which one. If only one of these could actually go into game, what would it be?
Obviously,
Can we take a closer look at
it would just be all of them.
I like how there's some hints of red in almost all of them. What is this little red symbol thing that's on the side?
This little bit?
Yeah, this little bit there. Just this little bit there.
Yeah, so this is from the original.
Right, that's the
RSI
attachment
helmet?
part that attached it to the glass, huh?
Yeah, honestly, that I could tweak that too, to make that something different. I've done that on other helmets where it's like, yeah. Partly it might just be a bit that I didn't even see. And I was like, whatever, I gotta move on. But yeah, I mean, do they want to see me make a different variant, or do you want me to go more to the right?
Interesting. This is pretty evenly split here. There's a lot of people. 5 and 6 is splitting the vote between itself. There's a lot of people that like the neutral colors because it's gonna, and neutral colors would go with more things.
Yeah,
obviously.
for sure.
But there's a lot of folks who like the strong red.
Yeah.
Then there's Blood Prophecy that doesn't like any of them. So contrarian.
Should I show more?
Sure. What else you got?
So, when I made these, we have a base list of 20 materials that you can see it here, that we often make. Now, in terms of what goes in game, that there's like a further layer of like art direction of like, these are the ones that the art director ended up really liking, so we're, end up going in that direction. But in terms
The road's
of,
not taken.
Yeah.
The road's not
Yeah.
taken.
So like, yeah, I mean,
I like the teal one.
this is actually a blue variant, and one of the artists was here was like, dude, baby blue and pink is a really good combo. I'm like, sure, I'll try it out. Why not? Yeah, and then like purple and gold and black usually look really nice. This is the pink variant I landed on. And then back here, it's like here's a black variant. So like in this one, I got rid of almost all the glows.
Is that the
Just
glow
for
from the
exposed
red
metal.
one that's reflecting on the black one?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it actually is glowing. It actually is doing an emissive of some kind.
Yeah, so the reflection of reflective surfaces around it will pick that stuff up, which is super nice because it looks cool.
That one's the
Tan.
the Oregon hipster, all natural.
Yes.
Recycled materials
Yeah.
helmet. Hi, Jake V.
Oh my God, I apologize. Yeah, so end up doing like a full list and then refine that down and potentially slip in one of these pink ones at some point. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is actually it. That is actually it for our show this week, everybody. Thank you for tuning in for this much shortened and abbreviated tour of the entire process that our character art team goes through for just a helmet. You can see it's one of those things. It can seem. We were talking about this before. It can seem easy, and there are aspects of it that get easier over time as you build material libraries and you build all your processes like that. Yeah. But the work to get to this point, the work to build the processes, to build the pipeline, to build the materials libraries and stuff, we're standing on the shoulders of a lot of the work that came before.
No, for sure. Yeah, and it's a constant thing of trying to find more efficient ways to go about these different processes. So something I end up doing when I'm making material variants, I don't dupe out the full 20 and go from there. Mm-hmm. First, I'll make I'll make the first one, which is red. And the way I think of it is basically like theming. So cool, I've set up this red one. I kind of like where all the colors are falling in terms of like a slightly darker red, black, and that. So then once I make that, I can then dupe a few materials out of that. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm going to set up those material variants, all I'm doing is going, oh, the dark red, I'm going to switch to white. Oh, the light red, I'm going to switch to orange. So like at that point, that gets really fast because it's just replacing. And like throughout the list of 20, I find a few themes and then go from there.
Let's give it up for Tim, who's just been standing there very still this entire time.
Yes.
The perfect model, Tim. That's where the phrase T-pose comes from. It's named after Tim. Did you know that?
I don't think that's real at all.
No, I just learned you something about your job. You can thank me later.
You're teaching me at this point.
All right, guys, that's it. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another show, and yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertsspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.